Hello guys, finally another new video after almost a year of not uploading any videos. So basically this time I'm going to show you a deck that I found interesting in two ways. A more casual oriented build and a more competitive oriented one. This deck is actually quite interesting for many different reasons, and it has mostly to do with the lessons I have been reminded by playing it. So I'm going to show you and I'm going to try to explain my thoughts. This is a deck I totally definitely recommend you to pick up if you want to improve at the game. Like this deck's really good because it's going to grow out with you. It's going to have more support. It has more support scheduled, and it's basically a deck that you can upgrade to make much more competitive, but it's also a deck that allows you to grow with it. Like, there's no point in buying new cards if you're really not good enough at the game. So you're only going to get frustrated. You have to get good and then get the good cards, and then you're going to do like super good. But if you just have the good cards but are not good, it's basically pointless. So this is a deck that is going to help you to become better at the game, and then when you are ready, like to invest more time and money into the game, it's going to allow you to upgrade it quite nicely. So first up we have three ki-sikil and three Lil-la. These are basically tour guides, just that at level 2. These cards are good. The problem with them is that they don't have like natural follow-ups. I mean, tour guide at least has like the level 3 toolbox, and then try and climb into cherubini, or make some kind of dumb stuff. But these girls really have nothing to climb into. For example, let's say you summon this and she gets Ash Blossom. The best you could like try to hope for is like go for Link Devotee, or the Link the other. There are two Link ones that have pretty much the same name. Link Disciple, something like that, and then like you're going to have to play like Monster Reborn and then play like Link Devotee, and then basically just end up with an IP. It's super mediocre, right? And you're wasting a bunch of extra cards for a super mediocre play. So in order to try and fix that, I decided that wasn't the right way to fix it, and if they Ash Blossom this card, I decided it was totally fine, and I was going to pass the game with pretty much no other additional play, right? Why did I decide to do that? It's because basically I remember how we used to play the game a few years ago, and it was totally fine to get interrupted and not have all of the answers, right? So if they Ash Blossom this card, fine, let them be. We're just going to set 3-4 cards, and we're going to try again next turn, and I'm going to show you how we're going to try again next turn. So I just play the 6. They are my starters, so it's fine. Then we play 3 Signet Mining. Remember, this is the more casual build. I hate that this card is super mediocre for competitive. It's like super high risk, super low reward. Like getting a twin to your hand is fine, but not at a -1, right? You're risking yourself to get hit by Ash Blossom here and taking a huge minus, which is really important for a control deck. Or you're basically taking the -1 to summon the twin, and then she gets stopped by any bullshit, right? Ghost Ogre, your combo gets interrupted by Ghost Bell, by Diddy Proud, by any kind of bullshit. So it's just not worth it to play this card. In a more competitive build, there is another card I would totally recommend you to playing over this, but this is a more casual advantage build, remember. I'm going to show you 2 ways to keep playing this deck. Let's say this is the beginner level, right? Then we're going to go for the more competitive setting. Then we have 3 Emergency Teleport. Again, this card is not super great because it requires a discard. This deck does hate discarding. That is why Konami designed Lil-la Frost, ki-sikil Frost, and Lil-la Threat, basically as cards that do work in the graveyard, so you can discard them. But even then, it's not super great. The only redeeming quality about this card is that they can basically just go summon this girl, and if they stop you with Ash Blossom, you can go ahead and discard and keep your play going, right? But it's not super great, it's just there for consistency. We obviously play 3 because we want consistency. Then we will play 3 secret password. This card is kind of important because it allows you to search our extender in case we do get stopped, and it also allows us to get another type of extender. Like, people is really married on the idea that extenders need to be cards you can play at that same turn, and that's simply not true. The most powerful extender in the world, it's banned, and its name is Maxi, and it's basically a conditional extender. It's not an extender you can play in your own turn, but it's a card that is going to extend your place in your opponent's turn, setting up for your next turn. So yeah, it's obviously this card is not as powerful as Maxi. Obviously, no one is trying to say that. Don't take that message. But it's basically just the same concept. It's just basically a conditional extender like Phantasme, etc. So what if this card gets Ash Blossom? Fine, I'm going to just play my other crab cards, my other cards, and then when you run over, or I could go like Almirage if I don't feel so confident. When you play your first monster, I'm going to be clean. And then in the end phase, I'm going to bring her back and try again. And that's basically just the foundation of the deck, right? So that's why we do play 3 copies. These cards also have massive synergy uh, with these cards, which are like the true boss monsters of the deck. So it's super important to always keep this card at hand. It's super important. I don't know why people would want to play less than 3 Impure Twins, right? It just doesn't make sense. So I'm going to delve into that a bit later. So that's 3. We also do play 3 more copies by playing 3 Call of the Haunted. Basically it's the same function, but this card is actually way better because it can bring back like Griffin, and it can bring it back to a zone. It is convenient to use, so your opponent is basically locked out. So it's super good. Again, same synergy. The synergy would be like having both twins in your own turn, and then just linking them up for the first boss monster you're going to want to summon is Abomination, and then as soon as your opponent's turn starts, you're going to bring back the pink one. The pink one is going to bring back the blue one, and the blue one is going to pop an opponent's card. And if you absolutely must, you can pop a second opponent's card with Abomination. But if it's not like necessary or something you can afford to do at that point in time, you can easily just go ahead and pop your own ki-sikil, so you can bring her back and get a free card. That's why those cards do have synergy. So that's pretty much why we played 3. It's super important. Then we have this card. This card is just part of the more casual build. This card, people says it's bad, and I don't necessarily agree. And that's mostly because I understand the game in a much different way people does. Like whenever I build a deck, I try to understand how does the end game looks for that deck. And the end game for pure Evil Twin, it's basically out resourcing your opponent in a simplified game state, right? It gets to a point where the game state is so simple that this card is going to win you the game. A simple game state is a part of the game where both players have as few options as possible. On the contrary, an open game state would be where both players have a bunch of options available to them. So this card is going to basically shine on simplified game states, because you're going to be basically grabbing this again, right? If you manage to be stuck in a position where you are already winning, it's going to make sure you have enough resources in your extra deck. And if not, it's going to make sure that you have some cards to play with. It's super good for a casual setting, and it's super good to play it when you are trying to learn the deck, right? What it does and does the end game looks for this deck, right? So let's say you torrential your opponent's field, then you're basically going to be in the end phase, recovering your twin and trying again. So, and if it fails, you're going to try to survive with whatever other cash you have, and then you're going to try in your next turn for free. For free, for free, for free, for free. That's the point, right? So it's pretty important for you to understand what the cards do before labeling them as good or bad, right? I honestly don't think even for a split second this card is as bad as people say it is. It's definitely not needed in competitive at the moment because the game is a bit fast. But regardless, this card is well designed and plays into the inevitability of the deck, right? Inevitability is a concept, a very, very, very complex concept in card games, but it's basically referring uh, to decks that are designed to win in the long game, right? We have decks designed to win as quick as possible, like returns, like they do have Herald with 3 to 5 negations, and they have their other stuff ready. But if you manage to hypothetically break that board, they're really not going to be able to recover that well, right? So that would be inevitability, right? Let's say they open with Herald and you open with a Kaiju, right? You're going to make the game longer. And the longer the game goes, a deck like Twins is going to be favored over something like Return. The shorter the game is, again, a deck like Return is going to be favored. So this card is actually well designed, and I do like it a lot for the casual build. The build I totally recommend you to try and learn the deck with. Just about copy because the password can search it. So in reality, we're running like 4 copies. So then we have the non-engine cards. These cards are super important because it's basically what is going to show us how much, how differently a deck can perform based on the non-engine cards you choose to play. We have three torrential tribute, which is the best trap in the game at the moment. People is playing like this card doesn't exist, and I don't understand it. Like this card's super good. You really have to be aware of it at every possible point in time. People needs to start respecting this card because I have seen so many bad players lose to it. So we're playing three. Then we are going to be playing three Solemn Strike. Three Solemn Strike is super important because it's basically our 2 card combo. This can clear pretty much any board, no matter how degenerate the deck is. So yeah, it's not going to be consistent. We're not trying to aim for that, but it's important for you to know that this is a shortcut to clear any kind of board possible, right? It's also a good standalone trap. Then we're going to be playing 2 Solemn Warning. Why? Because I don't have 3 Solemn Warning. I just found 2 in my grab pile. I haven't played this card like for ages. Uh, Also because Solemn Judgment is not really that good in a deck designed to make the game long. Those life points are going to matter in longer games. And the twins aren't exactly beefy, so you're going to be taking a bunch of damage. And it's also quite degenerate in casual settings. You are trying to learn the deck, right? You're not trying to obliterate your opponent. So you can play it if you want. It would be better like play like here and then cut something else to play like the 3 Solemns. It's definitely something you can do. Back row clears, and then we are going to play 3 Crackdown. Crackdown is good because you play a bunch of generic extra deck cards, which are the nightmares. So basically, any monster you have, you can take care of it quickly with your nightmare cards and get 3 cards in exchange because of the twins, right? So it's super, super good. And it's basically just one of the quickest ways to take care of opponent's cards. It's basically offense and defense, which is good for this deck because it's lacking in the offense department. And then we have 3 Power Sink Stone. This card is actually good enough for a more competitive build, but I wouldn't main deck it. I would definitely side deck it whenever I'm going first because it's quite powerful. It's pretty much in the same boat as Summon Limit. The main difference or the main takeaway here compared to Summon Limit is that this card actually is a bit more fair but in this particular deck it has a bunch of synergy, right? So let's say you end your turn with like blue on your field, and you have like power sink stone, right? Then in your opponent's, or you have set it right in your opponent's draw phase, you're going to activate it. And then at the start of your opponent's main phase, if they pass priority to you, you are going to chain link one, and then bring back pink. Pink is going to basically go because she's going to get you a free card, and then you are basically all set up. This card is going to go ahead. It's going to go up to two counters because you activated one effect here and one effect here, right? So it's basically your opponent is basically under skill rate by that point in time. So that's super good. And in the end phase, it's going to be clear, and that's important because there is going to be a point in the game where you're basically going to be on abomination, and in the end phase, like this card is going to go to 0 counters, and then abomination can destroy anything. It's going to go to 1 counter again, and then it's going to be clear, right? This card doesn't even stop like at your end phase abomination, which is like super good. So that's pretty much the casual build. This is something I totally recommend you to transition from casual to competitive. Well, let me show you the extra decks before we move over to the other point. So what we are going to play, we're going to play 3 blue, no big deal. Then we are going to play 3 pink. I don't have the 3rd pink, so this guy is going to be the 3rd pink. It's just 3 blue, 3 pink. Let me put it here so people don't get confused. Then we're going to have the Nightmare package, which is all of these cards are like super cheap, so no excuses not playing them. They are quite important because they are the extra deck toolbox cards, and they can easily get their holding effects with both of the twins, right? So it's super important. If I was going to play a second one of these, it would definitely be the unicorn, because sometimes you just need something to climb into with your twins so you can bring like pink back again. So it's super it's not super important to play second copy, but if I was going to play one extra of those, it would definitely be the unicorn. These guys I almost never use, so it's either this, one of these guys. And we have the boss monster of the deck, which is Unchained Abomination. It's super good because you're basically going to be on pink. Pink is going to bring back blue. Blue is going to pop an opponent's card, and then Abomination is going to pop another card. And then in the end phase, you're going to pop pink. And then in your turn, you're basically getting a free card for no reason whatsoever. So it's super good. So that's it. And finally, Dingirsu. This card is super important because otherwise you have no outs to stuff like Dragoon or something. So it's quite important you to play this, right? So nothing too complex here, nothing complicated, nothing really, but it's important to have. You can assemble it by using your 2 twins, so it's good. Sometimes it's your only out. And with the other 3 slots, you can do whatever you feel with them. Repeat Nightmares if you're on a budget. Play some other utility cards like IP. The new Link 5 monster in Blazing Vortex, which I don't have. Like Repeat Nightmares, IP, the new Blazing Vortex, good. Or play Board Wipers, which are these guys, right? Which are basically just in the same boat as Dingirsu, but they are harder to play. So yep, that's pretty much with the other 3 slots. Then I'm going to show you how to make the deck more competitive. First up, in competitive at the moment there is a huge paradox problem where if you lose the die roll, you're going to be in a massive disadvantage. People complain a lot about the game being die rolling, but then you look at their decks and their decks aren't really equipped to handle like going second, right? So this card is super powerful, but it's not great going first, so we're going to cut it. This card is not even that powerful in competitive settings, so I would definitely cut it. In competitive settings, back row is not a thing, so or heavy back row is not a thing, so we're going to cut this as well. This card is super weak in competitive. This card you could definitely make an argument for playing. So I don't know, it's up to you, but I definitely wouldn't play it like right now. I would still definitely play Torrential Tribute. I wouldn't play like a Leaf Twin channel because the game is a bit too fast at the moment for the inevitability part of this card to make a huge impact. So I would definitely cut it. And finally, the last cut I would do is basically just a free sign of mining. It's a mediocre card. It's just bad. So what would I replace this with, right? First up, the deck would suffer consistency issues if we play it like this, right? So we're going to need a consistency boosted card that is not a minus one. The one I would definitely choose is Auto Prosperity. If you don't have Prosperity, then play Desires. There's no excuse. This card is super budget, so play Desires instead. Um, but definitely the preferred choice would be like Prosperity, right? So that would be the first three changes. So we have three out of the way. Next up, I would definitely swap this card with Nibiru. Nibiru has an issue, right? Nibiru is not a card that you can play by itself in competitive settings. You always need to open this card with a second hand trap because meta decks can outplay it easily. But when you open it with a second hand trap, it becomes quite devastating. So that's why we are choosing it. Then we're going to replace like these three cards with Ash Blossoms. Then we're going to replace these four cards with Ghost Ogres, which I do like better. And we can also play like one Ghost Bell, right? Then we're going to replace these cards with the other two Ghost Spells and a Meister. Yep. And then we are up to the last cards, right? So we have 3 slots. We can go like 2 more Meisters. And then play something else, a 14 card, a Diddy Crow maybe. It's going to depend mostly in how meta the place you're going to play is, right? Because Crow, Meister, and Bell are super specialized cards. This card's super good in the Virtual World matchup as it can stop like the King Long. This card is it's okay. It's not great against Return, but does something. It's okay against Virtual World. I actually don't like this card a lot. I think this card's overrated. It's not great. It's kind of mediocre. On the other hand, this one is much better. But I don't know. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. It's going to depend a lot in your meta, right? So you can basically replace them for any of these cards. Like you maybe can play the Solemn Strikes if your meta is not really that into Virtual World and Return. But it's going to depend mostly. So that's basically how you can change the operation and the overall strategy of deck by just changing the non-engine lineup, right? So what changed? What else changed, right? This. In your opponent's turn, you maybe want to prioritize like playing one twin over the other, because usually what we do is just end up pink so we can bring back blue, right? But if you're playing more hand traps, it might make more sense depending on the game state, depending on how the field is, to go into pink to try and draw into a hand trap. So it's something to keep in mind because the pink draws are going to start becoming relevant, because instead of being pink cards you can use for the rest of the turn, there are going to be trap cards which you can start using immediately. So it's going to change the whole dynamic of the deck, right? So it's something to keep in mind. That's exactly what changes. I do like this deck. Just my closing thoughts, because it's basically upgradable. It also forces you to interact with your opponent. It also forces you to properly deck build by separating engine and non-engine cards. It also forces you to think outside of the box. Like people, it's so fixated on like, hey, this gets hashed. Hey, I'm going to try to find a way to make abort the spy dash, which is not necessarily the correct answer. The correct answer might be like said this, and call the hunter. I have serious doubts that my opponent is going to be able to easily walk away through this with something like vehicle ward, like they have to open like Duster. But in case they do, you're basically just going to try again next turn. So unless they keep throwing like the nuts, they're going to start struggling, right? So it's pretty much the philosophy that you have to adapt, like playing bad cards like World Legacy Succession or wasting your extra deck slots for Link Devotee or Link Disciple is not necessarily the answer. Like we had simpler answers before, which was okay, I failed, I will set some, and I will try again next turn. And this deck is built upon that foundation. That's why Pink Link gets you free cards because it's basically designed to draw you into more defense, right? So I don't know, people is oftentimes trying to overcomplicate things, and this deck is good because of that. It's going to properly show you how to build a deck and how to think more strategically about the game rather than hey that extender goes brr. If it doesn't extend, it sucks. Yeah, it's quite more complicated than that. So that's pretty much a deck profile. Hope you liked it and let me know.